Hey there, Sherry Caulfield here. Welcome to Two on Tuesday. Each week, I share a powerful 2-minute tip that, when implemented in your business, will have a dramatic impact on your productivity, your revenue, and the ease and success you enjoy in your business. Today, I want to talk about being a guest on podcasts and how you can actually monetize that effort. The truth is, being a guest on podcasts can be difficult to monetize, particularly when you're starting out and you may not have as much practice actually being a guest and converting to a next step at the end of that of the recording, right? Of the guest podcast spot. So I want to give you 3 tips today. If you're starting out, or even if you're pretty seasoned in terms of being a podcast guest, but maybe not getting the results that you want, on how you can actually turn a podcast guest spot into people reaching out to you, actually getting on your calendar, and eventually becoming at least a part of your community, if not becoming a client. So the first thing is, never accept an invitation to a podcast that isn't a really good fit for your audience. It's honestly a waste of your time. Now, exception to that is when you're brand new, you might be a little liberal about the fit because you're practicing. You want to get used to giving your signature talk on the podcast, so you can be a little bit more liberal in terms of what qualifies as a good podcasting artist or podcasting host, if you will. But generally speaking, talk to people that are going to want to hear what you have to say. Make sure the podcast is a good fit to get your bang for your buck. So that's the first one. The second tip is to make sure that you have a very, very clear call to action. You need to focus on one next step that you want that person that's listening to the podcast to take, and you need to make it incredibly easy for them to take that step. Now, typically, I recommend trying to get them off of the podcast and into your community. That can be difficult being a guest. A couple things that make it easier are, A, make sure you give the podcast host a link before the podcast so that she can make sure he or she can get it on the podcast show notes, so that they can click on a link in the show notes. And more importantly, if at all possible, use a link shortener or create a link in your own website that is very short and easy for you to say out loud and have a chance of somebody remembering it. Because most people listen to podcasts while they're running or while they're driving. They're not sitting in front of their desktop, so that when you share that your link is, https:// my website /podcast/ Jenny L/ you get the idea. They're never going to get that if they're watching or listening, I should say, to podcasts the way that they usually are. Use a link shortener to make the link as short as possible, so you can say, go to bit.ly / get my gift and get my free gift that I'm offering you today. Keep it very short and sweet. I know that's easier said than done, but it really is an important tip. The third tip on next steps on a podcast is to make sure that you promote the podcast yourself. And this is one that I see so many people miss. They take the time to actually get on somebody's podcast, and A, they don't do the host the favor, as well as the give them the respect of their podcast to actually promote it, to say thank you in a way by posting the link to the podcast on your social media channels, by putting it in your newsletter, your upcoming events, or sending out a solo email to your list saying, hey, I was on this podcast. I really want you to listen to it. Because even if it's someone within your community, that podcast, you might say something that's the tipping point that gets them to take that next step with you. So there you have it. There's 3 tips to monetize a podcast. I definitely recommend that podcasting is something that you use to hone your signature talk, to get yourself out there, get some credibility and visibility, and put these tips in place to get the most that you can. That's it for this week's Two on Tuesday. I'll see you next week.